This is Plant-Based Briefing. What is TMAO and why should you avoid it? Part 2 by Ocean Robbins at foodrevolution.org. And I'm Marian Erickson, host of this curated content plant-based podcast, where I narrate articles on plant-based and healthy living with permission in about 10 minutes or less every weekday. And today's article is longer than that, so I've split it into 2 parts. I read part 1 yesterday, so go back and listen to that if you haven't already, and then come back here for part 2 today. So now let's get to today's plant-based briefing. What is TMAO and why should you avoid it? Part 2 by Ocean Robbins at foodrevolution.org. Cancer. How much TMAO is circulating in your blood may also influence your risk for certain types of cancers. For instance, a 2014 study found a positive correlation between higher TMAO levels and risk for colorectal cancer. The association of the two is so significant that a 2017 study called TMAO a new prognostic marker for colorectal cancer. The researchers found that median TMAO levels were significantly higher in patients with cancer than in healthy controls. Plus, those who had high TMAO levels had significantly shorter disease-free survival, a measure of how long patients survive after treatment that completely eliminates symptoms but may not cure the disease, compared to patients with low levels of TMAO. But it isn't just colorectal cancer that appears to be impacted by TMAO. A 2015 study found that excessive TMAO was related to a higher risk for aggressive forms of prostate cancer. And a 2018 study found that high blood levels of TMAO were associated with increased risk for primary liver cancer. Why? A 2021 literature review concluded that TMAO may promote inflammation, oxidative stress, and DNA damage, all of which could contribute to cancer mortality. Liver disease. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, NAFLD, is the presence of excessive fat buildup in the liver without alcohol abuse or another obvious cause. NAFLD is becoming increasingly prevalent around the world, and TMAO appears to influence how bad NAFLD can become. A 2019 study published in the journal Molecular Nutrition and Food Research concluded that high levels of TMAO worsen NAFLD by interrupting signaling pathways in the liver that manage bile acid metabolism. Plus, the authors of a 2021 cohort study called PREVENT, Prevention of Renal and Vascular End-Stage Disease, in which 6,415 participants were followed for a median of 8.2 years, concluded that plasma concentrations of TMAO were independently associated with all-cause mortality in people with NAFLD. TMAO testing. In humans, blood levels of TMAO stem from a number of factors, including diet, gut microbial flora, and liver metabolism activity. But how do you know if the amount of TMAO in your body is problematic? A TMAO test may be done in an emergency room setting to confirm a cardiac event if someone arrives with chest pain or other concerning symptoms. It may also be ordered to determine risk of heart disease or stroke. Use of the TMAO test often occurs for more accurate risk prediction of a major cardiac event in patients undergoing elective coronary angiography and patients with acute coronary syndromes. Clinical data also supports using TMAO testing to get a clearer idea of the risk for all-cause mortality in patients with peripheral artery disease, heart failure, chronic kidney disease, and after a myocardial infarction. To undergo the TMAO blood test, patients fast overnight and refrain from eating fish or other seafood, including fish oil or krill oil supplements, the day before the blood draw to avoid false elevations in TMAO. After a blood draw, TMAO levels are assessed in micrometers. A reading of less than 6.2 indicates a low risk of a major cardiac event, and the higher that number, the greater the risk. How can you reduce TMAO levels in your body? Minimizing foods that are very high in choline, L-carnitine, and other TMAO precursor compounds is the most effective way to reduce TMAO levels, and the easiest way to do that is to avoid the foods they come from, swapping animal-based foods for whole foods, plant-based ones. A 2021 study published in the Journal of Nutrition asked the question, what happens to TMAO levels when we put meat eaters on a vegan diet? Researchers asked 23 regular meat eaters, all of whom were obese or had markers for diabetes, to eliminate all animal products for 8 weeks, after which they could eat an unrestricted diet for the next 4 weeks. Their plasma TMAO was measured at baseline and again at weeks 1, 8, and 12. The average TMAO in the study participants was over 10 units when they started the study, which put them in the highest risk category. Just 1 week later, a vegan diet had cut that number almost in half, to 5.7. Just like that, the participants were in the lowest risk category. Their TMAO levels remained fairly constant after 8 weeks on the vegan diet. At week 12, however, following 28 days of rebound eating that included animal products, their TMAO levels had rebounded, averaging a whopping 17.5 units. In a 2020 randomized controlled trial called Swap Meat, which is a stunningly punny title for a nutrition study, researchers found that when people swapped out animal products for plant-based alternatives, their risk factors for heart disease improved, including their TMAO levels. Plant-based diets have also been proven effective for reducing gut-derived TMAO production among patients with chronic kidney disease. This is especially important because individuals with kidney disease are already at a higher risk for developing heart disease. Carnitine. So what can you do with your diet to help reduce your production of TMAO? First, you can reduce your direct carnitine consumption. Carnitine, which comes from the same root as the word carnivore, is, not surprisingly, highest in red meat. A 4-ounce beef steak can have between 56 to 162 milligrams of carnitine. Since carnitine is made in the body from the essential amino acids lysine and methionine, when you consume foods high in these amino acids, which are in plant-based foods such as legumes, quinoa, nuts, and seeds, your body can produce all the carnitine that it needs without having to get it directly from foods like meat and dairy. This is also why there's no recommended daily allowance for carnitine. Choline. Choline is also strongly linked to TMAO production. The key, however, is to get the right amount and not too much. The highest dietary sources of choline are meat, fish, dairy, and eggs. More modest amounts of choline appear to meet human needs without causing excessive TMAO production and can come from eating fruits, vegetables, beans, nuts, and soy foods. And it turns out that plant-based sources of choline might have a different impact in the body than those that come from animals. In a remarkable 2004 study published in the Journal of the American Dietetic Association, researchers had people eat 2 cups a day of the vegetable highest in choline, Brussels sprouts, for 3 weeks. At the end of the study, the participants' TMAO levels decreased from baseline. The researchers concluded that perhaps Brussels sprouts naturally downregulate the liver enzyme that converts TMA to TMAO, enough to effectively drop levels in your body. To minimize the TMAO your body produces, the single most powerful strategy is to eat a whole food plant-based diet free from animal products. Because it turns out that people who normally eat a totally plant-based diet may not make any TMAO at all, even if they deliberately try to make them by, say, eating a beef steak that's high in both carnitine and choline. Why is that? The makeup of a vegan gut microbiome contains very different bacteria communities than an omnivore's. If red meat isn't regularly consumed, the gut doesn't contain any bacteria that act on red meat to promote the creation of TMAO. A plant-based diet can protect you from the formation of TMAOs to such an extent that even if you do eat the occasional hamburger, your TMAO levels will likely not rise. Anti-TMAO recipes. Swapping some or all animal-based protein for plant-based protein can be delicious and satisfying to your taste buds when you have simple and flavorful recipes to follow like the ones linked below. Easy tofu breakfast muffins replace eggs and create an easy-to-make savory breakfast that can also substitute as a protein-packed grab-and-go snack. Ditching dairy has never been easier since the discovery of plant-based ingredients' ability to turn into umami, creamy goodness. Cashew mozzarella cheese is similar to dairy in that it tastes incredible and delivers creaminess, but it's different in that it's good for you. You can also create a satisfying plant burger to replace a red meat burger using lentils, flax meal, and lots of flavorful spices with the hearty and healing lentil burgers. All recipes linked below. As you ditch animal protein, you'll ditch the TMAO-generating compounds. Plus, by adding high-fiber plant-based ingredients, you'll build a healthy microbiome that protects against excess TMAO. A plant-based defense against TMAO. TMAO has been implicated as a marker in cardiovascular disease and a number of other inflammatory chronic diseases. It's a toxic compound produced by gut microbiota from eating foods high in choline and carnitine as well as betaine and lecithin, which are primarily animal products like red meat. But the good news is that you can reduce your levels and prevent TMAO from forming in the first place by adopting a whole food plant-based diet that changes your gut microbiome for the better. Eating this way also has the benefit of reducing your risk of all-cause mortality and the development and progression of heart disease, chronic kidney disease, type 2 diabetes, cancer, and liver disease. In conclusion, avoid this disease-causing dietary compound by cutting out animal products. TMAO is created in our bodies by gut bacteria when we eat animal products like red meat, eggs, fish, and dairy. High levels of TMAO have been linked to a number of inflammatory conditions, including heart disease, type 2 diabetes, chronic kidney disease, cancer, and liver disease. TMAO level testing may be done to determine heart disease and stroke risk or to predict major cardiac events, and swapping out animal protein for plant-based protein can cut TMAO levels in half and is the best way to reduce TMAO in the diet. You just listened to What is TMAO and Why Should You Avoid It? Part 2 by Ocean Robbins at foodrevolution.org, and I'm Marian Erickson, your host. And as always, I put a link to the original post in the show notes, and from there you can find links to all of the referenced studies as well as those delicious-sounding recipes. So please share this episode with anyone who might benefit, and thanks for listening.